The Pacific Ocean in November 2004 was deceptively calm. A vast expanse of shimmering blue that stretched toward the horizon. Off the coast of Southern California, the USS Nimitz carrier strike group moved with the silent, lethal precision of a clockwork machine. This wasn't a mission of war, it was a routine pre-deployment exercise meant to sharpen the tactical edges of the American military. Thousands of sailors lived within these floating steel fortresses, their existence defined by the hum of nuclear reactors and the thunder of jet engines. It was an environment of absolute certainty, where every blip on a screen had a name, and every shadow in the clouds had a logical explanation. The Pacific was not just a training ground, it was a sanctuary of American power. Among the elite aviators was Commander David Fravor, named as a seasoned Top Gun pilot and leader of the Black Aces Squadron. Fravor was the literal embodiment of modern tactical proficiency. He was not a man given to flights of fancy or ghost stories. His world was built on vectors, airspeeds, and engagement envelopes. If a target couldn't be quantified by his sensors, it simply didn't exist. He possessed a healthy skepticism born from decades of flying the most advanced machinery humanity had produced. To Fravor, the sky was a three-dimensional battlefield he understood perfectly, a domain governed by the rigid laws of aerodynamics, or so he believed until that fateful and crisp November morning. Nearby, aboard the cruiser USS Princeton, senior radar operator Kevin Day was staring at a digital nightmare. For several consecutive days, the ship's SPY-1 radar, the most powerful tracking system in the world, had been picking up ghosts. Day watched as anomalous aerial vehicles appeared at 80,000 feet, the very edge of space. They would linger, and then, in a terrifying display of impossible speed, they would drop straight to the sea in less than a second. No known aircraft could survive the staggering G-forces of such a maneuver. The airframe would simply disintegrate into dust. Day's confusion turned to a cold, creeping dread as he realized these objects were physical entities defying every law of physics. The objects persisted for days, hovering in strange clusters, seemingly oblivious to the immense military power around them. Finally, the command was given to intercept. Fravor and his wingman, Alex Dietrich, were already in the air when the radio crackled with a sudden shift in tone. They were being diverted to a real-world contact. The controller's voice lacked the usual rhythm of a drill. Fravor's skepticism remained, assuming they were being sent to identify a stray civilian craft or a weather balloon, but the coordinates were leading them toward a confrontation that would soon shatter his understanding of reality and the very nature of human flight. As the F/A-18S approached the merge plot, the sky appeared empty. But as Fravor looked down, the ocean told a disturbing story. Below the sapphire surface, he witnessed a massive disturbance. White water roiling over something submerged, roughly the size of a Boeing 737. Hovering just above this chaotic patch was the object itself. It was smooth, solid white and 40 feet long, shaped exactly like a giant Tic Tac. It possessed no wings, no rotors, and no means of propulsion. It moved with erratic, jerky motions, bouncing above the water like a ping-pong ball. It was a sight that defied every principle of flight Fravor had ever mastered in his career. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Fravor decided to engage. He instructed Dietrich to stay high while he began a descent. As his jet banked, the impossible happened. The Tic Tac didn't flee. It turned and mirrored his movements, rising to meet him. It was a conscious, intelligent reaction. The object was playing cat and mouse, maneuvering with sophisticated grace that mocked his jet. Fravor realized he was being challenged by technology that shouldn't exist. The encounter had only just begun. As David Fravor banked his FA-18 harder, pulling significant G-forces that pressed him into his seat, the world outside his cockpit became a dizzying blur of blue sky and ocean. Below him, the white Tic Tac didn't just move, it transitioned. It bypassed the laws of inertia that governed every other vehicle on Earth. As Fravor spiraled down in a tactical descent to intercept the craft, the object rose to meet him in a mirrored corkscrew. It was a dogfight against an adversary that didn't need wings to stay aloft or engines to propel itself forward. There was no heat signature, no exhaust plume, only a smooth, featureless surface that seemed to mock the aerodynamic constraints of the American fighter. The tension in the cockpit was thick, a mixture of professional focus and a primal recognition that something was fundamentally wrong with the scene unfolding before his eyes. The two continued their vertical dance, circling an invisible center point as if locked in a gravitational pull. Fravor, the seasoned hunter, was looking for an opening, a moment to cross the object's path and gain a tactical advantage. But just as he maneuvered to lead the target, aiming for where the craft should be in a few seconds, the Tic Tac performed an impossible feat. It didn't accelerate like a jet. It simply blipped. In a fraction of a second, with what witnesses later described as instantaneous velocity, the object vanished. It was there, and then it was gone, leaving only the empty, shimmering Pacific air. Fravor and his wingman, Alex Dietrich, sat in their cockpits in stunned silence, their radar screens clear and their eyes searching a sky that had suddenly become a void. The silence was broken by the crackle of the radio. Aboard the USS Princeton, Kevin Day's voice came through with a tone that bordered on disbelief. He informed the pilots that the radar had picked the object up again. It hadn't just moved. It had reappeared 60 miles away, precisely at their cap point. This was the secret rendezvous coordinate where the pilots were scheduled to gather after their training mission was complete. The revelation sent a chill through Fravor's spine. The object didn't just know how to outfly them. It seemed to know where they were going before they even arrived. It had accessed their tactical plan, or perhaps it possessed a level of predictive intelligence that made human strategy look like child's play. This wasn't a random encounter with a stray craft. It was a deliberate demonstration of absolute superiority. As they flew back toward the Nimitz, the professional curiosity that had driven the mission began to morph into a heavy emotional weight. Fravor and Dietrich were the best of the best, flying the most advanced sensors and weaponry in the history of warfare. Yet they had been effectively toyed with by a small white cylinder. The realization was humbling and terrifying. They were witnessing a technology that didn't just represent a leap in engineering, but an entirely different understanding of the universe. It was as if they were riding horses and had just been overtaken by a supersonic jet. The gap between human capability and this Tic Tac was not a distance of years, but of centuries. Shortly after Fravor's landing, Lieutenant Commander Chad Underwood took off, determined to track the ghost. Unlike the first encounter, Underwood was equipped with an advanced FLIR-1 infrared pod. He managed to lock on to the object, capturing the now famous grainy footage of a dark, oblong shape, hovering and then suddenly darting out of the frame at a speed that the sensor's tracking software couldn't follow. This provided the first electronic proof that what Fravor and Dietrich had seen wasn't a mass hallucination or a trick of the light. It was a physical reality, a solid object that refused to be identified or categorized by the military's most sophisticated hardware. Upon their return to the carrier, however, the gravity of the event was met with a jarring shift in tone. Their peers and some junior officers treated the report as a joke, plastering the hallways with pictures of green aliens and making fun of the UFO pilots. But while the crew laughed, a more shadow-like reality was unfolding behind closed doors. Men who didn't belong to the ship's roster, anonymous officials who arrived with sudden authority, appeared almost immediately. They moved with a cold, bureaucratic efficiency, confiscating the data tapes from the USS Princeton and the flight recorders from the jets. No explanations were given, and no receipts were left. By the time the sun set over the Pacific, the physical evidence of the most significant aerial encounter in modern history had been systematically erased. The pilots were told to keep quiet, and the incident was quietly buried under layers of classified folders, it leaving a lingering sense of a cover-up beginning at the highest levels of the Pentagon. 13 years passed. For David Fravor and the Nimitz crew, life returned to military routines, but their world felt changed. Fravor continued his career until retiring, yet he carried the image of the white Tic Tac like a ghost. He and Alex Dietrich lived with the weight of the impossible, watching the sky with different eyes. While others saw distant light, they saw a frontier already breached by something they could neither understand nor control. They were witnesses to a truth the world wasn't ready to hear, and for a decade, the silence from the Pentagon was absolute, as if the encounter had never happened. The silence shattered in December 2017. Then a report by the New York Times pulled back the curtain on a secret government initiative known as the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or AATIP. Suddenly, the grainy footage Chad Underwood captured was no longer a whispered rumor. It was on the front pages of global newspapers. The leaking of the FLIR-1 video, along with other UAP footage, signaled the end of the era of ridicule. The crazy pilot stories were replaced by a somber realization that the military had been tracking these anomalies for years. This was the turning point Fravor had waited for, when the burden of secrecy was finally lifted. David Fravor became the face of a new era of transparency. He was no longer the man who had seen something strange. He was a tactical expert providing a sober account of a technological reality. In the halls of Congress, Fravor testified with the same precision he used in a cockpit, describing the Tic Tac's physics-defying maneuvers to stunned lawmakers. His testimony, along with corroboration from Alex Dietrich and radar data from Kevin Day, forced a paradigm shift within the government. The transition was profound. For years, these pilots had navigated a culture of stigma and suppression, but now they were the vanguard of a mission for scientific truth. They weren't seeking fame, they were seeking an answer to the most significant question in human history. The climax of this decades-long saga came when the Pentagon officially admitted that the footage was authentic and that the objects remained unidentified. It was a staggering admission from the most powerful military force on the planet. Acknowledging their airspace could be violated by wingless crafts admitted a vulnerability that shook national security. The realization was chilling. The world's most advanced fighter jets were essentially stationary compared to the velocity of the Tic Tac. We were not the masters of our own skies. This wasn't just a military concern, it was a philosophical crisis. For Dietrich and Fravor, the journey from the cockpit to the congressional hearing room was one of reconciliation. They moved from the isolation of their shared secret to a role as historical witnesses, bridging the gap between the known and the unknown. Their friendship, forged in the heat of a high G turn over the Pacific, became a pillar of their advocacy for transparency. They had seen the future in 2004, and by 2017, they were finally helping the rest of humanity catch up. The fear that once colored their conversations was replaced by a quiet, determined hope that by studying these phenomena, humanity might unlock the secrets of the universe. Ultimately, the 2004 Nimitz encounter was more than just a sighting. It was a rupture in the fabric of human understanding. It proved there are heights we have yet to reach and mysteries that refuse to be buried. As we look back, we are reminded that the ocean is vast and its depths largely unexplored. The Tic Tac vanished, but the questions it left behind remain. The objects are still being tracked today, darting through the clouds and dipping beneath the waves. The white water disturbance remains a chilling reminder that something massive still lurks beneath the surface, each watching us as we attempt to understand a reality that is far older and more complex than our own. The sky is now a question mark,